Hey guys, I'm back, and in today's video, we're going to be talking about Ben10 Omniverse. For those of you that don't know, Ben10 Omniverse is the fourth iteration of the Ben10 franchise, and in my opinion, it's easily the best of all the Ben10 sequel shows. So go give it a watch if you haven't already. You don't need to have seen it to enjoy this video in my opinion, but it obviously helps if you have. And just as a disclaimer up front, there's going to be more than 3 parts in this video, because there was a lot of ground to cover. So let's not waste any more time here guys and jump straight into the video, shall we? Omniverse's art style is magnificent. Now, yes, at the time it received a lot of hate and criticism due to how different it looked from Alien Force and Ultimate Alien. And to be fair, it was a very large departure from Ultimate Alien's art style, and some of the promotional images were a little iffy looking. But honestly, looking back, the hate for the art style just seems so overblown to me. It's easily the second best art style in the whole franchise in my opinion. Derek J. Wyatt did a wonderful job here. A lot of his redesigns for the classic series aliens are honestly better than the originals in my opinion. Diamond Head, for instance, just looks so much cleaner somehow. I can't describe it. Maybe it's the more vibrant colors or the way his body looks, or maybe it's just the green eyes. But somehow I find myself liking this version even more than the original. And the same could be said of Ghost Freak as well. The chains are just such a great touch. Even if they don't actually signify Ghost Freak being locked in the Omnitrix like fans theorize, they're just such a great aesthetic that I love them anyways. Plus the way his head is shaped like a little wisp at the top is pretty cool looking. And I like the fact that the dark line almost looks like a mouth now instead of just a random line going all over the place. And whatever shade of color they used to make him, I like a lot more than the dull gray they originally used for the classic series. Again, not trying to say I hate the original Ghost Freak design, but the Omniverse one is just so much better. And speaking of better, Derek J. Wyatt's ultimate redesigns are so much better than the originals. They look like actual mutant creatures that were forced to evolve against their will like they're supposed to, instead of just lazy reskins. Although for Ultimate Humongousaur, I will say, I kinda liked the green skin, and kinda wish he had used that color instead of the duller gray. I don't know what it is about it, but I just thought it worked better, even if it did kinda make him look like a giant turtle at times. But hey, even though the colors aren't great, the actual redesign itself is pretty good. And even though we only see Ultimate Echo for like 2 seconds, I have to say, I kinda prefer his OV design. I know, people are gonna call me crazy, but listen, the more square head and the wires kinda looking like they're hanging out almost, alongside the duller shade of blue, just kinda do it for me. I can't explain it. Everything about Derek J. Wyatt's art style just has so much personality to it, and I honestly can't picture Omniverse or really any Ben 10 series not looking like this when I watch the show. Now, yes, not all of Derek J. Wyatt's redesigns were a smash hit. I'll say that he mostly got it right with the aliens, barring a few of Ben's transformations. But some of the human designs just look kinda odd. The weird proportions and stuff just make them look kinda uncanny sometimes. And can I just say, I hate the fact that Grandpa Max's eyes are just dots now. Everything else about his redesign is fine. His more vibrant red shirt along with the white pants that I could have sworn were in classic make him look wonderful. But those dots for eyes just, they irritate me and I can't explain why. He used to have 2 big beautiful eyes, and now what does he have? Nothing. But again, I think that's just kinda par for the course, and I think a lot of my problems with it just have to do with the fact that I'm so used to the way these characters look in UA that their newer designs and the more cartoony aspects to them feel weird. But just so this segment doesn't come across as too negative, I want to circle back to those alien designs I was talking about, because I wasn't just talking about the redesigns Derek J. Wyatt did for Ben's transformations. All of his alien designs are pretty well made, and all managed to look very distinct from one another, similar to how a lot of classic series aliens managed to stand out from Ben's transformations. Except I think Derek J. Wyatt did it even better than the classic series did, at least in this one particular aspect. Like, you really can't mistake Ben's forearms for one of the many disposable forearms in Luna's troops. Same with the bullfrag and a lot of other of Ben's transformations, which in my opinion is a lot better than just reusing the same model for all of the aliens like UA did, because it really helps breathe life into side characters you otherwise probably wouldn't care about. I think I've rambled on long enough about Derek J. Wyatt's amazing art style, so let's move on now to the next segment of this video, where I want to talk a little bit about the amazing cast of Omniverse.
Magister Tennyson here says you prefer these chili fries. Care to join me?
Partner!
Ben10 Omniverse has probably the best roster of characters in the entire franchise, but in order to keep this video relatively short, I'm only going to be talking about the main cast here. So let's start off by talking about Rook Blanco, Ben's new partner. Rook is, in my opinion, probably the greatest addition to the Ben 10 cast the writers could have made. You see, Rook not only bounces off of Ben's character in a fun way by not fully understanding the way he speaks and the sarcasm he uses due to being an alien plumber, but he's also just straight up an interesting character in his own right, even if you remove his interactions with Ben from the equation. Throughout Omniverse, we see small snippets of Rook's past and his relationship with his family. The episodes we spend with this family are really well written, as they not only do a great job in developing Rook as a character, but they also do a great job of building the world of Ben 10 and developing his species, the Ravana, along with their culture and people. In fact, this conflict with Rook's culture eventually becomes personified through Master Kundo, Rook's old master. You see, the Ravana really don't like the technological advancements of the rest of the universe, and Master Kundo specifically seems to hate pretty much any form of technology that isn't Ravana. So he goes to try and get Rook to come back to Ravana and abandon the plumbers, which leads to a conflict that ends with Master Kundo becoming, as he puts it, a walking contradiction. An accident allows Master Kundo to eventually begin to speak to technology. He tries to use this power to destroy the plumbers and Rook in a later episode, but is ultimately yet again defeated by Rook. This conflict is just wonderful to me, because it kind of mirrors the real world conflict of the younger generation versus the old. Rook is the young kid who just wants to sort of make his own path and not completely fall under tradition and do what his family has been doing for generations. He wants to do something different. He wants to stand out and be greater. Master Kundo, on the other hand, is deeply entrenched in tradition and refuses to change, and sees change as something to be feared or something that is inherently wrong. And this conflict is not only an interesting clash of ideals, but is also handled pretty well on screen, both thanks to the dialogue and the action. But not just the action of them fighting, but even the very way they fight is different. Rook uses newer techniques that he's picked up to beat his master, who still relies on the old ways of Ravana Kai in order to fight. He is unable to change because he literally knows no other fighting style, just like how he is unable to change because he is unable to process how technology can help his species and people. I don't know, maybe I'm just overthinking it, but I really enjoyed the conflict between these two characters, especially because the writers really didn't even need to give Rook an archenemy. He was already better than Kevin and Gwen were in Alien Force to me even before we found out about his backstory. The way he bounced off Ben was just a lot more interesting than the way Kevin and Gwen did, thanks to his more rigid, no-nonsense attitude, clashing very well with Ben's kind of all-nonsense / go-with-the-flow kind of attitude. But speaking of Kevin and Gwen, let's talk a little bit about them and how I think Omniverse managed to improve them.
Did you miss us?
Hey, Tennyson.
First off, I'd just like to say that the writers were geniuses for writing out Kevin and Gwen at the beginning of Omniverse. I've seen a lot of people say they dislike this decision, but I just can't understand why. Kevin and Gwen hadn't been interesting to me for a long time, which is really sad to say since they were two of my favorite characters from the classic series. But unfortunately, Alien Force ripped away pretty much all of their interesting character traits, which left us, the audience, with two versions of these characters that were very bland and hollow when compared to their original selves, and felt very out of character with those original depictions as well. And the only thing Alien Force really did to try and compensate for this was to put their characters in a relationship together, which was a very weird decision, because again, it didn't really feel like something their classic series selves would have done. and because they kinda just jump into a relationship after the first episode with no real build-up, making it feel very rushed. Now, yes, the writers did eventually give these characters some decent chemistry and some good moments that made me enjoy their relationship, but it couldn't really make up for the fact that their characters were no longer as interesting as they were in the classic series. Mainly because, although the writers wrote the relationship between Kevin and Gwen very well, they didn't really consider the relationship between Kevin, Gwen, and Ben. See, part of the reason these two were my favorite characters in the classic series was because of their interactions with Ben. Gwen's arguments always managed to showcase their differing personalities so well, and the few times Kevin and Ben weren't straight up fighting and actually tried to talk about their differences were some of my favorite moments in the entire classic series. It showcased the differences in their characters so well. One genuinely wanted to help people and be noble, whereas the other only wanted to hurt people to try and make up for the fact that he felt attacked his whole life. But by Alien Force, those interesting traits were all gone, and the writers didn't really add much to compensate for that other than the relationship, like I already said. Thankfully though, Omniverse is able to provide us with a solution. First off, like I already said, it writes out their characters, but it does so in a very natural and very well written way. Gwen just kind of wants to go pursue her dreams that she's had for a very long time, and Kevin, being the good boyfriend, goes to join her and tries to make out a life alongside her. And the few times Kevin and Gwen pop back up into the story, the writers really focus on their relationship with Ben instead of their relationship with each other. Kevin and Ben, for example, actually feel like the surrogate brothers they claim to be in the Agrigor arc, and Gwen has some pretty fun banter with Ben that's almost reminiscent of the classic series without just being arguments and hot-headedness again. It's more like lighthearted, playful teasing between cousins, which feels like a very natural growth from the classic series. And on top of that, their characters get entire episodes to themselves. Now yes, this did happen in Alien Force and Ultimate Alien, but again here I'd argue that it's written far better, because now we actually really do get a chance to see their characters and their traits on their own a lot of the times, and it feels much closer to how they were in Classic, while not completely disregarding their Alien Force selves. It's a very fine line the writers were able to walk here, and I'm very surprised at just how well written these episodes are. But now that I've finished talking your ear off about Kevin and Gwen, let's move on to the main character of Omniverse, Ben Tennyson.
So now you think you are a hero?
I know I am. It's hero time!
Alright, while we all know that I love the classic series version of Ben, I have to say that I think the Omniverse version is just better written. The writers clearly wanted to portray a far more mature Ben who had indeed learned his lesson already, and I think they did a pretty good job of that. Now, I know many fans disagree with me here, but I honestly just never really understood where they were coming from. Sure, this Ben is a lot more lighthearted and jokey, for lack of a better word. He cracks quips and doesn't seem to take things seriously, but that's only because he's been doing this for so long that I think he's become kinda confident in himself. He doesn't take every single low stakes villain seriously, but when there's a serious threat, or at least when he thinks there's a serious threat, he drops that jokey persona rather quickly.
I wanna go home!
Yeah, we also need to fix the mess Warlord me has made of this world. Grandpa Max taught me to always leave a campsite cleaner than you found it. Check inside. He took something. I'm going to stop malware. Once and for all. It's just a gadget! Be the hero!
Yeah, I think that little montage kind of proves my point. But before I move on from this section, I will just say one little thing. People seem to confuse darkness with maturity. And what I mean by that is people seem to think that just because you add blood, guts, and gore and death into a show, that automatically makes it mature. When that couldn't be further from the truth. The only real example I can think of that can help illustrate my point is the Ultimate Alien episode, To Catch a Falling Star. To Catch a Falling Star wasn't mature just because there was a random dead body at one point in the episode. It was mature because Jennifer Nocturne was going through a very real mental illness that was very clearly affecting her psyche in a way we, the audience, could understand and sympathize with. Her character and her character arc in that episode is very mature, and to me, that's what makes that episode so impactful. And going back to Omniverse here, I find Ben's character to be mature, not because he says a bunch of edgelord things or makes big speeches about murdering his enemies or something, but because when the chips are down, he gets very serious very fast. In my opinion, that's why Omniverse Ben is the best written version of Ben Tennyson, because the writers really had to think how to demonstrate this character's maturity in a way that made sense with his previous developments as a character, and it all feels very natural. As a viewer, I'm not left questioning, hey, why did Ben give his alternate self the advice of it's just a gadget, be the hero? I know where that's coming from. It's coming from his experience in the previous series, from when he's lost the Watcher when it wasn't working and he had to become a hero, or when he had to prove himself to Azimuth. And even if you just get into the series with Omniverse, I'd argue you'd still understand the impact of that line. I really can't think of anything else to say here, other than I don't think it's a major problem that Ben is more lighthearted in this series, because that doesn't take away from really serious moments like this. If anything, it kind of enhances it the few times Ben gets serious. So let's move on to the next part of this video, shall we? World building is an underrated aspect of storytelling and writing in my opinion, because it can really help a story's world feel a lot more real. Because when you can point to a certain species in a fictional universe and talk about their first steps in history and how they became the civilization we see on screen, it creates a connection that in my opinion really helps make the story come alive. And as you can probably tell by the title of this section, I think Omniverse did a great job at world building. Why do I think this? Well, it's because Omniverse doesn't just go for the typical escapism world building that we see in a lot more kid-friendly properties. Not to say that Omniverse has no sense of escapism. I mean, I would definitely want to live on Ravana and farm one day, but I wouldn't want to live in the Ben 10 universe forever for fear of getting caught by incursions, Vilgax, Tetramans, Hybrid, and the list goes on. See, Omniverse's world building goes a bit deeper than that, at least in my opinion. It gives us small details into the aliens that Ben uses, and reveals some pretty cool things about them, like how the Gourmands, upchuck species, actually are two separate species that Ben can switch between, and it goes into details onto how that happened. Little things like this really help the aliens feel a lot more real, and reminds me a lot of how in the classic series, it was always really exciting seeing the aliens interact with Ben, especially if they were ones from the Omnitrix, because it really did make the world somehow come alive. It made us realize that those aliens were real people. One of my biggest critiques with Alien Force was that the aliens didn't really feel like aliens or species that could be real, but rather just people with superpowers. I mean, Chromastone is literally just the Jesus of his race. There's not that much interesting going on with him. Compare that with something like the Ravana from Omniverse, who have a very clear culture and way of living, as well as very rich natural resources that their planet generates that provides them with what they need. It really does help the Ravana feel like they could almost be real, because they have very real tangible things about them and about their culture and about their world, unlike Chromastone. And it goes beyond other planets as well. Omniverse does a great job of building up the alien culture on Earth. Undertown is a teeming, bustling city filled with aliens from all over the galaxy. The aliens there don't always trust the plumbers, much like how in real life, a lot of people just straight up don't trust police to enforce the law. I won't go as far as to call this social commentary, but it is a nice parallel to the real world. I keep using the word real here, but I think what I should be saying is believable. I can actually believe that these ridiculous alien species, drawn in a somewhat cartoony way with unrealistic proportions, are real people going about their daily lives. I think that magic kind of gets lost on people, and it's why I think world building is sadly a little underrated. Because there's only so much you can do when your show revolves around fighting people, so creating a great world and giving the characters new settings and locales to engage in can help stop those stories from feeling repetitive. At the risk of ending up repeating myself here, I'm just gonna close out this part by saying my favorite episodes in Omniverse were ones where Ben and Rook went and interacted with other alien species, because they, like us the audience, were learning about these alien species and trying to figure out how to to solve problems based around those aliens' cultures and beliefs and worldviews, which I think helps, again, make these stories seem more believable, because Ben and Rook are kind of gently guiding us, the audience, through this world and through these different issues. It's like how if you go and learn ice skating for the first time, sometimes it can be helpful to have a friend there to keep you from falling and to teach you what you need to know and help you feel like you're not forgetting or missing anything important, as well as just being a friendly hand to guide you through the exercises. That's how I feel about Ben and Rook. They're kind of helping guide me through this vast, mysterious world whenever they go on these adventures. And in the opposite vein, Kyber and his pet dog are kind of the negative/angry faces that are teaching me to be very afraid of the predators, because they can all counter Ben's aliens in very unique ways. And just the fact that certain aliens have predators already makes them feel like real species again. They're like real animals in the real world who have natural predators that come after them sometimes. And again, what I mean by real is believable. I can believe that there's a species hunting Big Chill by hypnotizing it, because obviously you want it to get close so it doesn't go intangible or try and get away from you. Now Big Chill isn't just some kind of superpowered being with ice powers, it's an alien creature that's vulnerable and can't get away from this thing. Despite its seemingly impressive abilities, it's ultimately just a regular being. It again takes us away from the more superpowered beings/aliens and Alien Force that felt like they were practically untouchable, to more realistic beings that can indeed be hurt, who don't just have powers for the sake of it, but have powers because their species specifically evolved in a certain way. And again, it helps the world feel more believable. Think about it. Describe Big Chill to yourself or to a friend, but obviously don't use Big Chill, and maybe not even Necrophigian. Just say, oh, there's a species of moth that can go intangible, or at least appear to be intangible, whose predator tries to lure it out by releasing a sort of chemical that attracts it towards it, so then it can then eat that Necrophigian/certain type of moth. That's a lot more real sounding than just, oh, this species of moth can go intangible, go through objects, has freeze breath, and can fly. I think I've pretty much made my point here. I love Omniverse's world building. Even if it is just a silly, goofy cartoon, it somehow managed to convince me, both as a kid and even now as an adult, that its world could exist somewhere out there in the infinite cosmos, which in my opinion is a perfect example of the magical power of world building. Let's move on now to the next segment of this video, shall we?
Right now he needs our help.
That attack by Phil way back when I was 11, that was you testing out the Nematrix.
Omniverse is the show that finally managed to convince me that the Ben 10 series is one single continuity, and not just a bunch of loosely connected reboots like the X-Men movies. It does this by giving us very small but meaningful callbacks to the classic series. Like, for example, how it uses those flashbacks to explain what happened between Alien Force and Classic, or how it provides explanations to things that really didn't make much sense in Alien Force. Like, for instance, how exactly did Volcanus go from being a towering giant to some weird alien baby in a suit? Well, it's because Volcanus' body was almost completely destroyed after a battle with Ben, but his head managed to survive, and his minions placed him in a regeneration suit in order to help speed along that process, which is why he's in that suit in Alien Force Ultimate Alien and Omniverse. And if all that's not enough for you, the writers even go out of their way to try and use some of the pop-up trivia from the classic series. These things will literally blink and you miss them snippets of information that the writers very easily could have just ignored, but instead they go out of their way to add them into the story, just to make it all that more coherent with the classic series. So we get to see things like the Inner System and Kai and Ben getting together. This is just insane to me. Imagine catching one of the pop-up episodes back then in 2005 and seeing that information actually come to fruition 6 years later in Omniverse. Another reason why that's also impressive to me is because the writers don't just do this to service old fans like myself. They're telling new stories while doing this. For example, that Volcanus explanation isn't the whole focus of that story. The focus of that story is a side character introduced in Omniverse called Mr. Bauman, and his love story with his alien girlfriend. Volcanus' explanation just so happens to be there. It's a crucial bit of lore, but it doesn't become the focal point of a whole episode just to explain explain away a small inconsistency from Alien Force. This is more than I could have ever dreamed of in a sequel to Ben 10. New stories that are intriguing and engaging that also enhance the originals and fix mistakes made by other shows. And Omniverse doesn't just do this with the classic series, it enhances so many of the things from Alien Force as well. For example, Ultimate Alien gave Hex a pretty good speech about feeling bad about Charmcaster, but it kinda contradicted his classic series persona. So instead, Omniverse gives him a much better redemption by having him give up being a hateful person and giving away his stack of magic books to a local university and joining that university in order to tutor young children, all because he never saw Charmcaster again and felt bad about what happened and how he treated her. Speaking of Charmcaster, we now see just how insane she's become after she loses her father for the second time due to him rejecting her offer of resurrection at the cost of thousands of lives. It's clearly taken a toll on her psyche, and she's slowly going insane, which makes sense because Alien Force revealed a lot of tragic things about her backstory, and while a lot of them did contradict the classic series, Omniverse does a good job of kind of shoving that stuff to the side and focusing more on her character. The writers even explained that Vilgax was banished from his home planet, which makes his Alien Force warlord persona make a lot more sense, as it makes sense why he wants to rule Vilgaxia again. And that episode revealed why he was so desperate for the Omnitrix. He saw a time-traveling version of Ben using it and realized how powerful he could become if he did the same. Yes, it's a very typical kind of story you'd expect in a superhero story, but once again, it helps that it isn't the main focus, as that episode is about time traveling to stop another Ben 10 villain, Maltruant, from creating his own universe. There's so many more examples I could use as well, but unfortunately most fans seem to focus on one particular arc, and how it didn't do exactly what they wanted with the continuity. The Rooters arc. Listen guys, this video is already way too long, so I'm just gonna say this about that arc, since I know I'll get comments about it if I don't. I think the Rooters arc is the perfect example of all that I just talked about. It's fixing continuity errors, but not just doing so for the sake of it. It's telling a whole new story on top of that, and that story is about Kevin's character and who he is in relation to Ben and Gwen. Some people seem to say the opposite, but I think those people are forgetting that the Alien Force and Ultimate Alien versions of Kevin were very different from his original self, so it wasn't as easy for the writers to expand on Kevin, because again, he's very different, so they had to choose one version. Do we expand more on Alien Force Kevin and his backstory, or Classic Series Kevin and his backstory? Now, yes, I know people are already commenting, oh, they're actually not two different versions, A10. They make total sense together. See, the Classic Series Kevin had no backstory, and Alien Force Kevin gave him one. Okay, this is wrong for so many reasons. One, like I've already talked about, is just straight up not true. Kevin said stuff about his backstory in the Classic Series that gets contradicted in Alien Force. But two, you cannot just add on random details to a character's backstory, especially when they contradict that character in the way they acted in the original series. For example, if I suddenly took Slade from the original Teen Titans show and made a sequel to that show where Slade was revealed to be a pony from the My Little Ponies universe the whole time, and suddenly joined the Teen Titans and kept singing about friendship every 5 seconds, that wouldn't be very faithful to the original now, would it? Same goes for Kevin in Alien Force. The writers gave him a backstory that contradicted his original character, so the Omniverse writers chose to change it in the Rooters arc. Yes, it wasn't nearly as drastic as the Slade example, but it still contradicted his original persona. And I'm kind of annoyed that this has become such a big talking point when people talk about Omniverse. There's so much more to talk about for Omniverse, and there's so many instances of Omniverse continuing and expanding upon Alien Force and Ultimate Alien's continuity as well. This is the one instance where it retconned something from it, and it did so only because it wanted to be more faithful to the original. Now yes, ordinarily I'd say retconning is kind of a bad thing, and that you should try to be as faithful to the original characters as possible when writing a sequel. But there's a few factors here that kind of change that. One is the one I've already gone over, that they're trying to be more faithful to the original version of Kevin. But two is also the fact that the original writers of the whole Osmosian stuff from Ultimate Alien wrote this arc. So they kind of stamped their seal of approval on it, in my opinion. It's an open and shut case. They changed Kevin one time, they changed him another. I prefer the second one as I find it more faithful. It doesn't get much more simple than that, guys. guys. There is no grand conspiracy against Ultimate Alien like I've heard people complain about. So I think this complaint is kinda invalid, as well as people who complain that Omniverse is too lighthearted and not as dark as Ultimate Alien and Alien Force. It's the same writers, guys. They're just saving the darker scenes to make them more impactful this time, and I think that's great. Whereas with the classic series criticisms, I could somewhat see where people are coming from, but these ones I just mentioned don't make much sense to me. Not only is it mostly the same cast and crew, but for the most part they are faithful to Alien Force and Ultimate Alien. It's just that those series were so different from the classic ones that the writers had to make small changes to make it fit better. I'm mostly saying this because again I find these criticisms invalid, and because I got this super wrong in that Ultimate Alien retrospective video I did a while back. Anyways guys, I hope you enjoyed the video, because I know I did. While the classic series is still my favorite, I think Omniverse is just the best written of the Ben 10 sequels, and maybe even the series in general. This show had to take a lot of disparate ideas and mash them together in a way that makes sense, and it succeeded in that with flying colors. So for that reason I have to say, even though I personally still love classic more, Omniverse is top tier Ben 10 content. Watch it if you haven't already, and please subscribe to this channel as it really helps motivate me to make these longer form video essays. And like and share the video as well so we can get some traction on YouTube since the algorithm hates me. That's all for now guys, see you guys in the next video, where I plan to talk a little bit about the Ben 10 reboot. See you there guys.